Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Sorry it's been a couple of weeks since I posted, but I'm here, I'm back, and I'm here to say it's June and happy Pride Month. If I was good at video editing, that would be a rainbow, so just imagine happy Pride Month. I have a rainbow. So it has been a couple of weeks since I posted, but I wanted to get back into the swing of things and share a video about 6 things that we as individuals can do to have the biggest impact on climate change and fighting against the climate crisis. So it can be really tricky because I talk a lot about individual change on my channel and Instagram, but also it's really important that we use our voices to make change more broadly than just as individuals, but also that we make change within government and systems and things like that change. So the ideas that I want to talk about today have stemmed from a study that Leeds University did. And the initiative is called The Jump. I will link to it below, and it's basically 6 ideas that are not about perfection, they're about absolutely everybody making these changes. And once I list the changes, just imagine if everybody did these things, the change that we would see in the world. So I think I'm just going to jump on in and start off with number 1. So number 1 is about food. It is basically eating a largely plant-based diet. Again, it's not about perfection. If there are things that you say, I can't manage without this, or I can't manage without that, I couldn't be vegan because I love blank, just forget about it. Just eat that blank and eat everything else vegan, because we don't have time to worry about everybody being perfect. We have to make the changes that we can do now. And as well as eating a mainly plant-based diet, it's also about making healthy portions and not wasting food. So we want to eat that plant-based diet, but then remember the work, the energy, the carbon that is used to transport, grow, farm, all of the food, everything that goes into it, and make sure that we are not putting food in the bin and wasting it. Personally, I think this is a pretty simple one to do, probably starting with the easiest perhaps, maybe not, depends who you are. I've been eating a vegan diet for over 5 years now, and I do not consider it to be an inconvenience. That's my perspective, and as I said, we're not aiming for perfection, but I think it's just something that you could just start giving a go next time you go shopping. You could give it a go tomorrow, just start making changes in your diet and see where it goes from there. So number 2 is buying less than 3 new items of clothes per year. So I think this is another really easy one. I buy most of my clothes secondhand. The only things that I would buy new, sometimes you can get them secondhand, certain things, like I bought my walking boots. I wouldn't normally buy shoes necessarily once they're already used, but I managed to buy them secondhand but unused. But the only things that I would buy new are pants, socks, bras, and exercise, like running trainers, shoes, exercise clothes, things that are going to get really sweaty and that are going to get worn out anyway. As I said, I think it's possible to purchase certain things secondhand, but things like pants and socks or this year I have bought from sustainable companies, and I have bought them new. So I think 3 items of clothes is pretty fair. I certainly wouldn't, I'm assuming that 1 pair of pants, I'm buying like a box of pants and counting that as one thing. Hopefully that's fine. That's within the spirit of what they're going for. But yeah, I think this is fairly easy. There are so many clothes in charity shops, on Depop, wherever, that you can buy new ones, and it's probably enough clothes in your wardrobe as well. So so yeah, I think this is a good one, and it's not saying don't ever buy anything new, it's saying limit yourself to 3 new items of clothes every year. So the next one can be, I think it's doable, but I think that we're living, well, basically it is to keep electrical products for at least 7 years. So I think the tricky thing with this is that electronics companies make things so they become obsolete. So having a phone for 7 years is quite tricky because they do break. It's definitely doable, but by the end of it you're going to end up with a phone that's really, really slow. and potentially not working, like battery draining, that kind of thing. I buy my electronics secondhand, so hopefully that helps. But then things like a fridge, washing machine, Hoover, they're going to last more than 7 years. Computer, if you buy a computer where you can replace parts, that can be a really good way to do it, rather than buying a laptop which you have to then replace the screen and absolutely everything with it. And there are options like the Fairphone. So the Fairphone, you can replace parts of it. So you're never having to replace the entire phone, you can replace things as they need updating and upgrading. So I do think this is doable, and I think things like a camera would be absolutely fine. But yeah, it can be tricky because of the companies making things obsolete and making things so they do break after time, and it's just not possible to replace the battery in your phone, for example. So this is an interesting one. I think the longest I've kept a phone for is maybe 5 years. But I think the thing is, don't do the thing where you go into a contract and you replace your phone every 2 years, 18 months, however often it is. It's not necessary to always have the newest brand new phone. So yeah, getting out of that constant replacing of phones is a really good place to start, and then basically keeping it until it breaks and then replacing it, preferably with a second-hand phone, I think is a really sustainable way to do it. So number 4 is something that's quite interesting, because a lot of people that are within the environmental movement have the opinion that you should never fly because flying is so bad for the environment. But what they're saying here is that you take no more than 1 short haul flight in 3 years and 1 long haul flight in 8 years. And I found this quite interesting because I personally don't think I'm going to be in a position where I would need to take a short haul flight, and certainly not every 3 years. If I wanted to visit somewhere within the UK or Europe, I would go by train at this point. And I do, from what I understand, taking off and landing use the majority of the fuel. So I do find it quite interesting. For myself, I would prefer to say no short haul flights, 1 long haul flight every 5 years. That's kind of where I've settled with things. And I would say every 3 to 5 years, but 3 years at a maximum, 5 years I think is quite a fair way to do it. Because I do want to travel, I do want to see the world. But I think we need to get out of this kind of going to local places or going on these short flights all the time, once or twice a year kind of thing. Move away from that and make sure flights are a really, really special occasion and you're saving them for something really worthwhile and special. So the next one for me is the trickiest, I would say. It is to get rid of personal motor vehicles if you can. And if you can't get rid of it, keep your existing vehicle for longer, which I always do. I always keep my cars until they absolutely do not run anymore. But this is something I've been thinking about a lot. I've had a car ever since I learnt to drive 15 years ago. I've got to the point where I very, very rarely use my car. So perhaps 2 or 3 times a month, I would say. I don't even use my car once a week, 2 or 3 times a month. It's just really handy for taking things to the dump. I do live in a town, so when I was younger I lived in the countryside and I had to learn to drive in order to just get to the train station. I had to be able to drive. It was like an hour and a half bike ride to the train station, and you couldn't rely on the bus. There wasn't a bus service. There was, but it was very unreliable and only 2 buses a day. But now I do live in a town, so giving up my car is something that I've been considering, but I'm not quite there yet. I also feel like public transport isn't quite there yet, because there are things that I go to for work in the next town over, and it's hard to get there early in the morning. And it is expensive. For what it is expensive. I hope that infrastructure is going to improve over time and make things more affordable. because I am at the point where I pay to go on the train to most places, so now I can visit my mum by the train, which is really helpful. I used to have to drive to visit her because she lived in the village that I just mentioned where there were no buses, but now she's moved to a town, so I can catch the train to go and visit her. And there are becoming fewer and fewer things that I need to drive for. It just feels uncomfortable to be without my own car, and I think that's just something I need to work through, and my husband needs to work through, because it's both of our car, and perhaps I hope that I'll get to the point where I feel comfortable not having a car. I'm just not quite there yet, being completely honest about it. I'm not quite there yet, but hopefully one day. But as I say, I'm at the point where I am barely using the car, only when I have to, and yeah, we'll see. I'd love to know comments about how you feel about having your own personal car, whether it's something you've never had, whether it's something you'd be willing to give up, if it's something you have given up, if you've given up using your own car. That I'd be really interested to know some different perspectives on that. So the final thing is to do something to make a nudge, one life shift to nudge the system. That's what they've put here. So this would be moving to a green energy company. That is really easy. Just changing your energy provider to one that's 100% renewable energy. Insulating your home, that's something that is a bit more expensive, but it is possible. It is doable on a bit more of a budget as well. And changing your pension supplier. So this is something that is not very simple. It's doable, but it's something that I've looked into myself, and it's not the simplest thing. Maybe it's because I find finances a little bit scary, but I believe that they say that if you change your pension to a green pension provider, it has 21 times more impact than becoming vegetarian, giving up flying, and something, going to a green energy provider. That's it. So it's your biggest, one of your biggest investments in your life, if not the biggest investment in your life. And if all that money is going to funding fossil fuel companies, that's not great. So what I've done at work is I've spoken to my HR department, and we've spoken with our pension provider, and we are now moving the entire company to a default pension, which is all about green investments. And I think some pension providers are moving that way anyway, so default pensions are becoming greener. But I would highly recommend going and looking at Make Money Matter and looking into the different pension options for your company, because just changing yours is one thing, but if you're able to change the default for your entire company, that is an absolutely massive impact. So that's something I would really highly recommend looking into, and talking to your HR department and looking at Make Money Matter to find out about moving pension investments. So these are obviously changes, I should say these are obviously changes for people who are living in affluent countries. For those of us that actually have the resources and privilege to choose what kind of diet we eat, to buy new clothes, to fly places, to own our own car, all that kind of stuff. It's obviously coming from people of privilege, but if all of us who do have access to these things made these changes, just think about the change and the impact that would have on the world. It would be absolutely incredible. So as well as doing these changes, make sure you share things on social media. Do whatever kind of activism is comfortable to you, and maybe push yourself out of your comfort zone, but doing things that work for you. It doesn't have to be going to a protest or doing scary things. It could be talking to your family, your friends, people at work about these ideas, these things that you can change, and that's a really simple way to get started. Share things on social media, talk to people you know, because talking about it is how individual change will have the biggest impact. So I hope this has been interesting. I'll obviously share all the links below about the Take the Jump initiative. I would love to know your comments and thoughts on these 6 ideas, about how impactful they could be. I think they're great because, as I said before, it's not about perfection, it's about making changes, and everyone en masse making changes, and it's really what we need. We need individuals. We need 1 million individuals making changes rather than a tiny group of people being absolutely perfect environmentalists, that's not what we're here about. I'm certainly not perfect, and the system we live in isn't perfect. It's just not possible. So let's just do our best. Let's talk about it. Let's get the word out there. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please do follow me on Instagram. I'm quite active on there. I try to be anyway, sharing ideas and tips and things and ideas about my life. And I've really been enjoying sharing more vlogs and things about my personal life, because I think it's really important to put out there that I am not perfect, as I've said a million times. I'm not perfect. I'm just having fun. I'm just trying to enjoy life, and I'm trying to minimise my impact on the planet, and hopefully sharing that is sharing some ideas for anyone out there who might be watching. So I love it when anyone comments on my videos with a nice comment or anything to interact. That really means a lot to me, because I'm a very small YouTuber, but really enjoy what I'm doing. So anyway, that is enough waffling from me, and hopefully see you again very soon. Bye.